to be able to log on. Welcome to those of you who are just now joining us to your Resiliency GPS with Eileen McDargh. And while we're waiting for a few more people to call in, I'm going to hold up Eileen's new book. It is so exciting that this is available, and we're going to cover a lot of topics from the book in today's session. We're so glad to have you with us. As we get started, I'll introduce myself in case you don't know me. My name is Becky Robinson, and I'm the founder and CEO of Weaving Influence. And Eileen has a similar title with a twist. Eileen, you are the founder and CEO of McDargh Communications and the Resiliency Group. But to you, CEO means something different. Can you tell us about that?
It stands for Chief Energy Officer. And the reason we finally decided that's what I was is that at the end of the day, to be resilient requires a tremendous amount of energy. It's how do you keep on keeping on? And if you think about it, I firmly believe that the most important renewable energy resource is human energy. And that's what we're really going to talk about. What do you do to keep it? What do you do to get it? What drains it? What drains it away? So to be a resilient leader, a resilient organization, to have a resilient life, to have resilient relationships, they all take a tremendous amount of energy.
That is certainly true. I know that I notice the difference in myself when I get up at the beginning of the day and I have a ton of energy to tackle what's ahead compared to maybe at the end of a day, if there have been some hard times, I feel completely drained. And isn't it amazing how every morning there's that renewal? I hope that you'll have some tips along the way that we can get renewal not only at the beginning of a new day, but throughout our journey. So that's going to be awesome.
Well, if you think about it, Becky, what we're really talking about is how do we create connections? If you think about a car, when you put a key in a car and you turn the ignition, a spark flies. If it's a good connection, there's energy and the car moves forward. If it's a bad connection and it's draining the battery, nothing happens. So when we think about this whole notion of resiliency, we are really going to look at how do we create those connections with ourselves, with our stakeholders around us, so that we have that energy.
That's awesome. So as we begin today, I want to do a couple of housekeeping things as we start. The first one is that throughout the call, we will have some time for questions with Eileen, and you can use the question panel in GoToWebinar for those questions. The second thing is we're going to also have some polls, and if you can watch your GoToWebinar dashboard, you'll be able to add your answers to those polls. And along the way, we definitely want to have you contribute to this ongoing conversation. The third thing is we'd love to have you contribute to the conversation via Twitter. And so we have a hashtag for you. It's on the bottom of every slide. And we also have Eileen's Twitter handle there, McDarling. So if you would like to add to the conversation and share this event and these ideas with your Twitter followers, we would invite you to do that. So with that in mind, and since you've shared with us, Eileen, your very different definition of resiliency, what I'd like to do is find out now who's on the call by taking a look at your first poll.
That's great. Let's do that, Becky, because ultimately connection has to start with individuals, which is why Becky and I opted to have you see both of us rather than hearing disembodied voices. So if you can put up that poll.
I absolutely will. So this poll question says, where do you find yourself today? And what we want to do is we want to find out who you are on today's call. So where do you find yourself today? Please select one. If you're employed in the private sector, perhaps you're employed in the public sector or a nonprofit. Maybe you're self-employed, as Eileen and I both are, or maybe you're retired and looking for your next role. Or if it's none of the above, if you want to, you can use the question panel to tell us how you would describe yourself. Eileen, I'm looking at this coming in. It looks like we have nearly most of the people who are coming in are split between the private sector and public or nonprofit. We have about 16% of the people on today's call who are self-employed, 8% retired and looking for their next role, and a few people who are going to describe themselves differently. And I'll check the question panel in a few moments to see if I can get some insights into how those folks would describe themselves. I also have a question while we're waiting for more people to answer the poll about how to view the webcams. Your GoToWebinar viewer will have a choice about where you position the webcams. It should be on the top of your GoToWebinar viewer above where the poll is, where you can select where you can view those webcams. So hopefully you can see us because we're smiling at you. I'm going to give a few more seconds on this poll. It seems like we're getting a lot of answers in. Thank you for those who have voted. About 87% of people who are on the call have voted today. And I'm going to take a quick minute and let everyone see those results of who is on the poll today. So we have 35% of today's callers in the private sector, Eileen. We have 36% public or nonprofit, 18% are self-employed, 7% are retired and looking for a new role, and then 4% are describing themselves as other. So
did anyone type in what that other was?
You know, I'm looking for that now. No one did. If you're on the call and you describe yourself as other, I would love to see your reply. And I'll look for that and share it along the way.
So what I see here, and actually, Becky, I can see the numbers on our control panel, which is really helpful. So basically, we're for the majority of us, we are working. For the 7% that are looking for the next place where they want to go. So here's the next question that I'd like to ask. What drew you to this Resiliency GPS webinar? You're giving us the most precious thing you have, which is time, and I intend to fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run. So on this next poll, I'd really like to know, why did you come? What is it that prompted you to give us this precious time? So Becky, can you put that one up?
I absolutely can. So this poll says, what drew you to this session? What is your destination? The first choice is, my workload has increased significantly. I am overwhelmed. The second choice is, personal anxiety about managing family issues. The third answer, trying to figure out Act 3 in my life. The fourth one, a new role and I want to rise to the challenge. And the fifth says, hone my leadership skills. Now, originally Eileen had a sixth option of other, and we can only have 5 answers. So if you'd like to share another reason that you were drawn to this session, I invite you please to use the question panel so that we can see why you're here. And so far, overwhelmingly, it looks like nearly 60% of you are here to hone your leadership skills. And that is exciting to hear. So people are continuing to answer the poll. I know when I first saw this question, Eileen, I thought I could answer yes to many of those. There are so many areas of our lives that need resilience. For me, I'm not really figuring out Act 3 yet, but all the rest certainly apply at one time or another.
Well, what I really appreciate for all of you who are here on this call is that you're really looking at this as being a leadership option. And my sense is that everyone has a leadership role. It has nothing to do with title. And in order for you to help other people be resilient, you must be the change that we wish to see. So I look at that. We've got, can they see this yet, Becky?
I'm going to close the poll. And I also have a few people who have typed in the other. So if you want to address these percentages, and then I'd love to tell you the others.
Sure. I mean, look at the 60% hone your leadership skills. I love it. I love it. And that will help me focus some of my comments so that you can help the people around you as well as yourself. What did you find out, Becky, when on the other?
Sure. So Angela wrote in that she works in a hospital system, and they're addressing nursing compassion, fatigue, and resiliency methods. And so they're researching that, and she's wanting to get some information.
That is perfect. Angela, maybe you'll have to call me and we'll have to talk about this sometime too, because there's a lot that's there. I do a lot of work in healthcare. What else did you find?
Well, I'm tickled by this one. My friend Paul is here because he's hired you to speak at a conference and he wants to see you in action. And so for any of you who might be on the call or watching the recording later who are hiring speakers, I highly recommend Eileen, and I'm just going to give her a little plug there shamelessly. So thank you, Paul, for being with us today.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. Paul and I will talk tomorrow. Well, let me say something. Today being Wednesday, January 21st, I'd like you to think that you have come here for your own individual reasons, but at the same time right now, kicked off last night, Becky, I'm trying to go back, is the World Economic Forum in Davos. The reason I put this up there is one of the underlying themes that is going on right now in Davos with leaders of the world. We're talking business, industry, politics, heads of state. is they're really looking at all the challenges that we encounter right now in the world and what are some of the responses that can create a more sustainable future. So you were in very good company, and you didn't have to pay $40,000 and put on Ugg boots and fancy clothes in order to have this. So you're in good shape. So what I want to do first is really redefine this whole notion of resiliency, and I think we have to dump the dictionary. The dictionary, basically, if I ask any group this, I say, tell me what balance looks like, they say, well, it looks like bouncing back. Well, that's fine if you're Bozo the Clown and you come back. It's fine for trees and it's fine for metal that can bend, but it is absolutely not fine for the human system. I firmly believe that there is no such thing as going back. Never. In fact, my definition of resiliency is how do you grow through challenge or opportunity so that you end up wiser, better on the other side. So for me, it's always is about a growth position. So if I think about whatever's going on, how do I help people grow through it? Notice I said challenge or opportunity. I think we need resiliency all the time, and it can be when you are faced with a great opportunity, an opportunity to open up a new division, an opportunity to move someplace. So there is another skill that a word that goes along with my definition, and it's the word resilience. To me, this is preemptive resilience. What I believe is that resiliency is a life skill. And I can't wait until an event happens to all of a sudden say, oh my gosh, now what do I do? So I want you to think about, as you listen to this, what are the things that I can do on an ongoing basis, just like these two kids who got their flu shot, so that I can begin to build up my strength now for the times which I will have in which I am challenged and my energy levels are being hit. Now, when we talk about preemptive resilience, and I'm going to give you some more ideas of preemptive resilience, though I love the kids with the flu shot. And I think as Angela, you're in the healthcare system, you know what that's like. You've got a lot of patients that are coming in there that had they taken care of some things earlier, you wouldn't have them there in the hospital. Is the notion of a GPS, a growth potential strategy. The reason I like this notion of a growth potential strategy is wherever we find ourselves within our work or our personal lives, there is always a place where we can grow forward. So if I look at what's happening in my life right now, where is it that I want to go? And for those of us who have the smartphones, or if you're like me, I have a smartphone and I'm a dumb user, that happens all the time, is that a growth positioning strategy has recalculating questions, just like Siri does. So here are a couple questions that I'd like you just to consider for yourself right now, and you will be getting a copy of this, so you don't have to write this down. But where do you find yourself now? What the heck is going on? Now, thankfully, and I did get the name right, Angela, is that correct,
Mm-hmm.
Becky? Angela,
Yes.
with the healthcare group.
Correct.
Right now, you've got nurses who are overwhelmed, the status that's going on. What is changing around you? I'm just going to use you, Angela, as an example because you're the only one whose business I can relate to or know what's going on, is that it could be the volume of the patients that you had. It could be all of the paperwork that is now being required within the healthcare system. Sometimes what we don't want to do is we don't want to change or move forward because the devil we know is better than the devil we don't. And we become stuck. So my next question is, where would you want to go and what do you want to have happen? If I can clearly have an intention of what I want to have happen, not knowing how it'll happen, but then it clarifies for me and I begin to make some better choices. So if I think of those as being the recalculating questions, just as a place to start, I'd also like to offer this word of encouragement. I believe that you are braver and stronger than you ever think. All of you who said, I want to enhance my leadership skills, one of the things that would be helpful for the people around you is if people are afraid of change, to begin to ask them, as I do when I come in and facilitate groups. I say, you know, what is something that you have experienced? Either you self-selected it or it happened, and you got through it. And you discovered you were far stronger than you ever thought. Because when we're in the middle of it, we think we can't. And yet, I will guarantee you, everyone on this call has had an experience that when you moved through it, you went, wow, look what I did. In fact, let me ask some questions. In fact, Becky, so that we have a conversation going on here, was there an event in your life, or maybe currently an occurrence, a hindsight, that to you required a lot of courage? And what pulled you through?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we talked about this before, I referenced my undertaking last year to run my first marathon. And it did take a lot of courage. I remember the first time my husband ran a marathon back in the late 90s. The night before his race, I thought he might die because I'd heard, it's such a taxing thing and all of that. And so to go from being in this place where I was afraid my husband would do a marathon and die to the place that I myself was going to run a marathon was a huge journey for me, a huge leap. And it did require courage and discipline as well.
Okay, so notice you said courage, okay, which actually comes from listening to your heart. Coeur is the French word for heart. And the strength was, you said there was a discipline for you to do this. Becky, you're running your own business right now. Do you think you need discipline to run that business?
I need discipline every single day.
Every single day. Is there a different strength that you might need to call upon?
I think endurance is another strength that I had to call upon, and then also mental toughness. Having done a marathon now, I think that most of it's mental. And so it was this belief in myself, the belief that I could do it.
Okay. So those of you who are here to hone your leadership skills, these are really great questions for you to ask your stakeholders who are around you to help them identify some strengths that in the moment they might not realize they have, but they absolutely have used them. So I wanted to give you an example of how you could even facilitate those kinds of conversations, which I think create very, very important dynamics within an organization. So if we look at just kind of where do you want to go, how brave are you? Let's talk about what are the skills that it takes to do this. And I think to be a radically resilient leader, there are 4 skills. And we're going to spend some time on the first one, which is adaptability. And everybody says, okay, you got to be adaptable. So you got to have another way of doing something. Well, yes and no. The operative word that you see on this slide is the word requisite variety. Requisite variety is a term that comes out of biology, and it basically says that the organism with the greatest number of responses to any given situation is the one that will survive. So, for example, Becky, if you and I were going to play chess, and I knew 3 chess moves, and you knew 33 chess moves, who's going to win?
I will.
Of course you are. So this notion then of adaptability is how do you help yourself and others find multiple ways of responding to a given event, to a given situation. The more, even though you might not like all of them, you want as many options for yourself. That's actually what happens in sustainability is can we find multiple ways for responding? And the way in which you and I find multiple ways of responding is first and foremost, it's in your head. We talk to ourselves all of the time, and that thinking can either give us energy or can deplete it. So here are some questions that I like to ask groups, like, what are you thinking now, and does it serve you? What would happen if we tried X? Well, why not try this? Who says so? Organizationally, oftentimes that keeps people frozen, or even in professional life. Who says so? Well, my wife says I can't do that, or my parents say I can't do this. Well, who died and gone to heaven and made them the supreme ruler of all? So sometimes our own thinking keeps us back from being as adaptable as we could be. Let me give you an example of who says so and why not. All right, Becky, what color are washcloths in hotels?
White.
Right. Right. At the Spaceport Hotel, opposite the Boston Convention Center, in the rooms, there is one black washcloth, and embroidered over it, it says makeup.
Smart.
Smart, eh? See, I think that's a very great example of who says they have to be white? Why couldn't it be black? I use these generic examples hoping that it will help you, our listeners, and viewers actually, to be able to think, how can I look at this differently? I'm going to put up another slide because I think to know more, you have to notice more. You have to look deeper and wider to find other options for yourself. Now, this notion of noticing more, I'm going to put up a picture. Becky, if I were to tell you, if you were like, when I remember my mom when I was growing up, the term sleeping around, was that a good thing or a bad thing?
A bad thing.
It was a bad thing. What I'm showing you right now is a company called Sleeping Around. And what you are looking at are cargo containers that are normally left to rust on the docks after the cargo has been delivered. This company, Sleeping Around, has turned them into a hotel unit. And right now, this unit that you're looking at is sitting in the dock in Antwerp, so that it's become something other than what it normally was used for. That's how we become innovative. That's how we acquire adaptability. Another way we can acquire adaptability is to look for strategic partners. Who could you work with right now? Who could you talk to right now that at one pace you might think, well, they're a competitor, but the truth of the matter is, together, you could be stronger than you are apart. You know, when I've done work sometimes at hospital systems, they don't realize that they've got strategic partners internally because they see each other somehow competing for either time, energy, budget, whatever. Because I deal so much in meetings and I'm brought in so often, I wanted to show you an example of a strategic partnership. So what you're going to see here, this is the logo for Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Meeting and Conventions Industry, Milwaukee, and this last picture is Portland, Oregon. I spoke for Destination Management Group, and these three were sharing a booth. Well, aren't they competitors with each other? They're competing for meetings to come and stay there. Well, they rethought this, and they said, you know what? What if we bill ourselves as three for the price of one? You have three, you start out on the East Coast in Pittsburgh, you move a little bit farther over to Milwaukee, and you end up on the West Coast in Portland. This was a wonderful example of thinking differently. So instead of seeing people as being competitors, they said, what could we do together? If you happen to go to my website, you will see the Resiliency group. Technically, if you looked at the people who are in my Resiliency group, we look as if we're competitors with each other. However, I think that together we offer a whole lot more than some of us individually, and they bring strengths that I don't have. So one of my questions as you look at adaptability is who could be our strategic partners? Now, this notion of looking at things differently, here's a practice that I think, and Angela, for you within the healthcare environment right now, this might be something you want to remember and take back, is how can we practice intelligent optimism? Intelligent optimism is how do we reframe what's going on so that we see what is possible, not what is impossible. And oftentimes what happens, and healthcare is not alone, I don't care any industry, we have a lot of negative people. They'll tell you why everything is bad, and all it does is drain the energy out of the culture. Intelligent optimism says, okay, is there another way of looking at this? So, for example, when Katrina hit in New Orleans, horrible event, here would be a reframe. We have a great opportunity now to figure out how can we renew our wetlands. What a great opportunity to look at how do we create systems so that oil spills like that don't happen again. We have a great opportunity to look at how do we build buildings in a way that makes more sense so that we can have some type of footing when Mother Nature decides to take a call. That's how you turn things around. Becky, I know you have 2 kids, right?
I have three. Mm-hmm.
Three. I think you will appreciate this. Children are so creative, and sometimes they give us wonderful examples of what I think of as intelligent optimism. I was speaking up in Canada for an early childhood educators conference, and one of the educators told me that there was this little guy, I presume he was 6 or 7 years old, who kept coming into school dressed as Superman. And finally, I don't know whether he was prepping for Halloween or what, but finally the teacher said, honey, you need to come to school in school clothes, not dressed as Superman. Well, the next day the little kid comes and he's got on his khaki pants, he's got on a white shirt, he even has on a little tie. And he told his buddies, don't tell her, but I'm Clark Kent. That's a brilliant example. That's a brilliant example of reframing. So if I think about adaptability in that skill, how do I constantly learn more, know more by seeing more? How do I seek strategic partners? How do I reframe? And then here's one other thing. What the heck are we holding on to? Oftentimes what keeps us back from being adaptable is we hang on to stuff that we do not need to hold on to. It can be everything from old grudges to old ways of doing things. Years ago, I remember back when Ameritech was actually alive and well, they had one person who was spending 3 full days a month creating this monstrous report like this and disseminated throughout the organization. Now imagine 3 productive days a month for this report. They finally got some wisdom and they asked the people who got to the report, do you read it? You can guess what the answer was, Becky.
Nope.
They got rid of the report. They did it because, you know the phrase, it's the way we've always
done it.
The way we've always done it. So I think one of your challenges for all of you on this call is to go back and look at what's going on in your life and am I doing some things that, you know what, maybe if I did it a little bit differently, I'm holding on to this, what would happen if I let it go? What also will increase our adaptability is what I think of as looking for viewing points versus a viewpoint. A viewpoint is a singular way of seeing something. And what I wanted to put up here for you, what you see is a mountain range. I like to hike the top of this mountain range, and it's beautiful. It's about 4.5 miles up to the top. Well, if you look out on one side, I'm looking out at the Santa Barbara Channel. And you can see the Channel Islands. That is a viewpoint. It's a singular way of looking at something. Look what I would miss if I did not turn around. Very different, isn't it, Becky?
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
Yeah. The Los Padres National Forest doesn't look at anything like the other one. So this is where I think our question then becomes, you know, in order to be resilient, who else can give us a different way of looking at something? So here's a question for you. Here's the next one. You want to put this one up for us, Becky? Let's see.
I absolutely will. We're going to ignite our next poll.
Okay. Because, and sometimes, by the way, okay, the people that we need to ask are the people we don't care for very much. But the truth of the matter is they might have some real wisdom to share with us. And for those of you who are trying to hone your leadership skill, don't just ask the people who are close to you. Ask the people who are most intimately involved with the event in which you are handling. Oftentimes we forget to ask the front line, and we keep it up here, and it's the front line that has the answers. I've seen that happen far too often in organizations. So I'm looking down here. Looks like most of the time, excellent. I see that coming in, 58%.
And people are still voting, so I'm going to leave that open for a few more seconds.
Okay. Well, bravo for you, all of you that are saying most of the time. It would be marvelous. I see we still people do all the time, so you're doing very well with this, doing very well on that. Sometimes I think we come into workshops and seminars not so much to find out what is radically new, but to be reaffirmed in what you're doing. So I hope you consider this a reaffirmation that that's exactly what you need to do. So, Becky, looks like you closed it.
I did.
Look at that. Well, if I add up the 8% and the 58%, that's 64% of you doing everything from most of the time to all of the time. Congratulations. That's a great thing. Before I go on to this next skill, do we have any questions that have come in, Becky, that I need to address?
Great question. I'm going to take a look at that. I have not seen any recently. I think everyone is listening so closely.
I have to say, I am giving you a fire hose gang. So just hold on and hang in there with me.
Absolutely. And I'll keep watching the question panel in case there are some comments that come in.
Becky, don't hesitate to interrupt me. You have to say, here's a question we need to take.
Okay.
So here's the second resiliency skill. excuse me, I forgot this one. These are the other questions. Who can provide me with another viewing point? Remember, you will be getting these. Who's gone through this before and can offer insight? And why might you be reluctant? Sometimes we don't want to admit that we don't know, that we don't have all the answers. Sometimes it's a place of vulnerability that we don't want to ask this. I know right now, having dealt with parents with Alzheimer's, there's a number of us who are now finding we need to help each other know how to get through parenting your parent. So these are some of the questions. Now, here's the second trait of a radically resilient leader. It's agility. Agility is speed. It's speed coupled with wisdom. How fast can you look at different things and then, not knee-jerk, but then how do you put things in place? Now, here, if you want to tweet this, this is my quote, but I firmly believe this: action is the antidote for anxiety. If you are very anxious about what's going on, put something in motion. I don't care what it is, but put it in motion. It is when we begin to move, when we begin to do some things, that we begin to feel that we have some control over the fear. In fact, this is where the resilience, my preemptive resilience, comes into play. I told Becky this weekend, I did something that, we teach what we need to learn. I created a my own earthquake kit. I live in Southern California. My earthquake kit had to be at least 15 years old. And it's not just a little kit. We're talking majors. I hadn't looked at that. I was not resilient, and I'm kidding myself. So I spent the entire weekend creating what we need to have to keep my family safe. I finally took my own advice. Because as you see from this quote that's up here, a bend in the road isn't the end of the road unless you fail to make the turn. And if I had not done that earthquake preparedness, which we're almost done, got a little bit more food to put, and I've got my 30-gallon water tank already, and my shoes underneath the bed, and I've got the grab and go for the car. It's what you need if I choose, this is a choice point, if I choose to stay in Southern California, and I do. Here's a good rule of thumb that can help you, is what I think of as the rule of the elephant when you think about action. Okay, so Becky, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time. You're absolutely right. One bite at a time.
I hope it's chocolate.
Well, you know me, dark chocolate. I'm the dark chocolate kid. Yes, one bite at a time. Whatever action you want to take, don't take the whole thing on. What is something that you can see some kind of result on that gives you a sense of control, that you can try? Now, when I say that you can try, one of the problems that we see it happening in economic systems, I see it happening in risk management, is that we don't create small feedback loops. And by a small feedback loop, it means that, can I take a small step, look at it and say, well, did that work? No, maybe we need to tweak it a little bit. If I wait to get a feedback from this action till it's completed over here, I might have missed a whole lot of things that happen in the middle. So we want to be able to take small steps, and in those small steps, then we want to be able to say, did this work? Did this work? I'm hoping that at Davos, Switzerland, they don't look at just large things, but begin to say, what are the small steps that we can take for the various issues that actually are impacting our planet right now? So I hope that makes sense. So what are the actions? That's what agility is. What will you put in place? And the third trait of the resilient leader is laughability. And laughability is, obviously, it's a sense of humor. I know that, Angela, you know this from the healthcare environment, that laughter is a great healing tool. The more that we can laugh, it increases the endorphins within our system. And I always believe when I'm with the group, we have to laugh. I thought you might enjoy this cartoon. Let me put it up here for you. It's the Adult Rehab Center. I love this cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the old folks enter on one side and then they leave as kids. Oftentimes, and we know that saying, you take yourself lightly but your work seriously, I think we need to create lots of opportunity for laughter. And not just laughter, but also play. Stuart Brown, who is a psychologist, actually has done a tremendous amount of research on the value of play in being resilient. And one of the things that he noticed is that in bear cubs, that the bear cubs that will play the most versus the ones that are kind of shy and don't do much and don't play around, the ones that play the most are the ones that seem to have the best survival skills. I want you to think about that, because what play does is play opens us up. It opens us up to possibilities. Becky, can you think of some things when you, in your life, when you look back, that laughter or playing helped you stay resilient or become resilient?
Well, I think it's a daily thing, honestly. And I thought of an example. This morning I got an email from a client, and she was mentioning something she was happy about, and if it came to pass, that she was going to go and kiss my team member because she'd be so happy that this thing happened. And so I right away sent back another email, and I put in a link to this YouTube video of that song, I Kissed a Girl by Katy Perry. And we were all laughing. It was obvious through this thread of emails, like we were having fun with this idea of when this good thing happens, you know, we're going to kiss and have champagne and celebrate. And, you know, it's easy sometimes to start the day with a full inbox and be stressed. But just to try to bring a humorous spin to an email reply along the way, it's a daily practice, I think.
Yeah, that's, I love that. That made me think of something I was with. It's the second largest rural hospital network in the nation. And they've gone through a tremendous amount of changes, as I'm sure many of you have seen in your business, in your professional lives, your personal lives. And they have a new CEO, and they decided they had not brought together all of their employees in 4 years. And what's important is they have this wide geography that they cover. So literally some of these employees had to be bussed in for 2 hours. They created a 2-day. So they had employees in the morning, one group, and then employees in the afternoon, another group. Employees in the morning, one group. So we did this 2-day thing, 4 different sets. They made sure that everything that they did was filled with fun and optimism. They had people on the buses. They had singing. They had T-shirts. And one of the things that they asked the different departments, and it's very widespread, is they took the song, you know, Farrell, what's his name, Happy?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
What's his last name? I can't think of his last name.
Sorry.
Well, they had their, I guess they used their smartphone, and these different departments all danced their own version of Happy, and then they played that video in all of these 4 sessions. People laughed. People saw each other differently. It was a wonderful way of saying, you know what? We're all in this together. We have an intention to do really good work. We want to do really good work.
Mm-hmm.
And can we have fun doing that? And I have to tell you, the feedback that I've gotten from the powers that be in that healthcare network was that ability to laugh and to play has had this ripple effect to allow them to keep on keeping on. So I think that's just a wonderful thing. I love this quote. This is from a gentleman.
Hold on one quick second before we move on. I did have someone tell us the name of that person, Pharrell Williams. Actually, 2 people did. Thank you. Yeah, and Laurel wrote in and said, you know, related to laughability, you might as well laugh about it now, from Marie Osmond. If the situation is something we will laugh about later, why not laugh about it now? So that's a good addition. Thank you, Laurel.
That's great. Since I did mention about my mom and the Alzheimer's, and so many things were wrong, and one minute she was dying, next minute she wasn't. One minute she's dying, next minute she isn't. So we called her Yo-Yo Ma. Yo-Yo Ma, up and down. And she would laugh and says, is Yo-Yo Ma again? Are you coming or you going, Mama? Which do what do you choose? So I love this quote. If you aren't having fun at work, fix the problem before it becomes serious. Ask for help if you need it. If you can't fix it and won't ask for help, please go away before you spoil the fun for the rest of us. And I think this is, I would put that up. I would put that up everywhere, because I do think that it is that ability to, to laugh. Sometimes I think if Congress would only laugh with each other, they might find better ways to solve some of the problems that they face. In fact, someone put something up on Facebook yesterday, and it did make me laugh. Becky, do you know what a gathering of baboons is called, I mean, this is true. You know what a gathering of baboons is called? Like a gaggle of geese is a gaggle, what's a gathering of baboons?
I
It's
don't
called,
I don't
it's
know.
called a Congress. You don't have to make stuff up. The universe provides you with so many things that when I saw that, I thought, oh my gosh, can you believe this? In fact, when I said you don't have to make things up, I'm constantly looking for things that just strike me funny and share them. This was a sign, and it just cracked me up. When I've done work in long-term care, they love this, washing back you senior citizens. Well, that could save water. And time is always difficult when you have a number of seniors to take care of. So we thought that just really tickled me. I was at a restaurant up in the Seattle area, and it was called the Barking Frog. And in their parking lot, it said Barking Frog Parking. All others will be TOAD, Toad.
That's funny.
We love it when people can have that, that kind of sense of humor. So for those of you who are saying, I want to hone my leadership skills, maybe one of the ways that you can say is, how can we create more joy and more humor, more laughter, more play in what we do? And by the way, the research also says people are willing to switch vendors to do business with people who are fun in the sandbox. You don't want to come into work with people who look like they were weaned on a pickle. Came in with tight underwear. Why the heck are we here? We want to be with people who are having fun, and we'll switch if they're not. So Becky, do we have any questions before I go on to the very last skill?
I have not seen any, but I was thinking, I just went to Disney last week, and I think that Walt Disney World as a corporation has a lot to teach all of us about fun and laughter. And it seems to me that when we can laugh on the job or laugh in our experiences, everything we do will become more memorable.
Oh, I like that thought. I like that thought. In the Disney culture, particularly the people who are the characters, they have this whole underground network of rooms, of halls that allow the characters to appear in one part of the park and one part of the other part. So Goofy can be in Frontierland, and later on he's over here at Space Mountain. But when they leave that tunnel that puts them out in that part of the park, there actually is on the floor, there's a piece of tape, and there's a mirror, and it says, you are no longer you. And you look in the mirror. And so if I was playing Goofy, I'm no longer Eileen McDargh. I look in the mirror, I'm Goofy.
Mm-hmm.
So I go out and become that character. And sometimes I think when we deal with difficult people, that sometimes I need to become a different character to be able to be resilient for them and know how to handle that in a wise way. So I think I like your idea of your idea of Disney. They sure could teach us something.
Sure. So what I'm seeing in the panel is that a couple of people are asking about the slides, and I think you mentioned that we will be able to send these slides back out to the attendees. Is that correct?
Yes. And may I ask you, please? You will not be able to create this as a PowerPoint program. This is my work, but you can certainly see them. You can reference them, but it's not going to come to you as a PowerPoint slide. Right, Becky?
Yes, we're going to create a PDF and send the PDF.
PDFs.
Mm-hmm.
You will see them. Yeah, you will see them that way. And I have many more things that I'm constantly looking. And by the way, if you find some things that you think would fit and I should know about, I would love to be able to hear from you about that. So let's look at the very last skill, and the last skill is alignment. And alignment, to me, the personal mission and values, is really best captured by this picture. I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to join a colleague on an anthropology colleague to trek the northwestern part of the Indian Himalayas. And what you see here in this picture is a monastery. And you can look at the land that's around it. You notice it's very dry, it's very foreboding, it's stark. And these monasteries for the monks have been there for literally hundreds of years. What allows them to remain standing is that they are in bedrock. When I think of alignment, my question to all of us, myself included, what is my bedrock? What is it that, all things being equal, this is why I am here. As long as I can be true to this, as long as I can be doing work or engaged with people that I think I can make a difference, I can keep on keeping on. If you don't have that, it's really hard to be resilient. Viktor Frankl, in the middle of the Holocaust, as a survivor, he said, man can survive any what if we have a why. And to me, that why is really important. And when I'm with groups, I like to help them reframe and find what I think is their why. Yesterday we had with Becky Haley Foster, who helps people make TED Talks. And her big why is, she said, how do I help people who have ideas that can change the world? My why is, how can I help them get those big ideas out? That's a pretty big alignment. For some of us, it's, how do I make sure that I have created and crafted a family that is strong and resilient and supports each other in our community? Many ways to have alignment. So that brings up really the last polling question. So, Becky.
Yes, ma'am.
If you would like to put this up, that would be great.
I am going to launch that.
That is meaningful.
Here it is. I have work that is meaningful. Select one. Most of the time, sometimes, rarely, or never.
No, I'm liking these numbers that are coming in.
I agree.
So let me say this about work. Our work goes from here to here. It's huge. There's going to be part of, quote, your work that is tedious and boring and difficult. What we want to do is to find what is it in this, quote, work that brings me alive. And when I think of this, when I wrote my first book, the definition of a job is what you do for a paycheck, and that's where most of you are sitting right now. Work is what you do for a life. It is that energizing, all-encompassing activity. And so when you think about being resilient, and there'll be different parts and different pieces of your life, then you can be able to say, And if, let's see, how are we doing on our poll? You close the poll, so let's look at this. Sometimes it's meaningful, and 4% rarely. Okay, so for those of you that said it's rarely meaningful, my GPS, my growth positioning strategy and recalculating question for you would be, think about a time in which there was something that you were involved in that you felt really good about. What about that allowed you to feel good? And how could you recreate that or something similar in your life right now? Those of you who are looking to hone your leadership skills, this is a great question to ask the people whom you have around you. What are the things that matter most to you about the work you do? And by the way, sometimes you need to tell them what's meaningful. Oftentimes we don't know what the actions, my actions here, how do they impact somebody over there? Angela, for you in the looking at compassion fatigue, part of it is sometimes we need to step back so that we can move forward, because that is very difficult. And how do we compassionately support? How do we compassionately support each other? Because I do think that one day, our life is going to flash in front of us. And the question for me, the question for all of us is, if it's flashing in front of us, is it the life that you want to flash in front of you? So with that as a final thought, Becky, do we have any comments or questions?
I'd like to invite people to post their comments and questions now, and as we're waiting for them, I would just love to hear from you, Eileen, as you've gone out into the world with this message. I would love to hear what some people are saying about the bedrock or the alignment piece. Do you have any stories of things people have shared with you related to that and how it makes a difference with resilience?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. So this one, again, Angela, poor Angela, we're picking on Angela, but I'm really glad you said what it is that you do. My general practitioner says, he's at the age of retirement. He said, but I love my patients. I don't want to leave my patients. This is why I get up in the morning. Despite all of the red tape and the bureaucracy and the insurance, all that kind of stuff, he says, I love my patients. That to him is bedrock. There is another gentleman who was managing a country club. And what Henry said to me is, funny little guy, he said, he always called me, he was an expat from France, and he had a gravelly voice. And he said, hey, honey girl, did you see that? I made him laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking to people as they were standing there. And he said, if I made them laugh, I did my job. For Henry, that alignment was to see a smile come across somebody's face. It was pretty darn fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that brought it forward for him. I also think sometimes organizationally we create processes and systems that are so draining on the human system that people don't have time to figure out what the heck is meaningful. And those are the things, if we look at how do we create better and better workplaces, because how do we simplify what it is that people do so that they can do that which is most meaningful,
Mm-hmm.
to do that which is most meaningful.
That makes a lot of sense. I have a comment from Tori, and she wanted to tell the group, for people who are struggling with feeling good with work, she wants to suggest an idea that she's proven. She says we should find something that we have a passion for and serve, and that she said that's really helped her feel happier and more worthwhile.
Great.
Yes, thank you, Tori.
All right, thank you so much. Because sometimes the job is what provides the paycheck, the work we do outside of the job. And I think that's what Tori is saying, is that, you know, I go to work and I do what I need to do here. And hopefully you have some strong relationships that are there in that work and you give it your best effort. But what you really love, I'm going to make this up, what you really love is that you are a brownie leader. And that's a great passion for you. I'm making that up. It's outside of, quote, the job, but it is the work. It is what feeds you. So thank you, Tori,
Sure.
for offering that.
I have another comment that came in from Bernard, and he appreciates this take on resiliency. Even though he's done some training regarding resiliency for years, he says that your take resonates with his personal experience as a cancer victor. And to me, that goes back to that whole thing about, you know, you're stronger than you think you are, or what have you brought with strength before. So thank you for sharing that, Bernard.
You know what I love, Bernard? Notice he said, I'm a cancer victor. Our words create our reality. When I've done some work with risk managers, I want them to change the word. Instead of managing risk, let's manage opportunity.
Hmm.
Stop looking for the risk and say, what's the opportunity? So if this, how do we craft that in such a way? Because it opens up a wealth of ways to be adaptable. So I really appreciate all of you being on here. Let me tell you what I have.
Oh, wait, I have one more question.
Oh, sure.
Okay, sorry. Christina has a question. She's a community college faculty member, and she says that it sometimes gets hard not to quit trying or not to give so much effort when it feels like you're swimming upstream. And so she's wondering, when you get into that place, what strategies or suggestions might you have for her before we wrap up the call?
Christine, I love it. First off, I have spoken to 3 different associations connected with the California community colleges. We have the largest community college network in the nation. I love community colleges. I am convinced that your work is so incredibly important. the career and technical education that comes from there that allows people to get out of school without having a huge debt over their head and actually have a career at the end of those 2 years or be able to matriculate to the 4-year university. I think it's incredibly valuable. And sometimes I think when you say, how do I get to that place? Do not surround yourself with people who are negative, with people who are saying, oh, can you believe they did this again? They're requiring us to do this. I have grant fatigue because I can't, I need money to be able to do this. Begin to look at your students and ask them what makes the time valuable for them. I thank you for being part of that whole system, because it is an incredibly important one. And I will share with you one thing that my youngest daughter, who I thought we were going to lose, lost her way, could not find traction. She entered one of the community colleges here in Southern California, and at the end of those 2 years was an ultrasound technologist. She now makes more money than I will ever see. She is very happy, and she did it through the community college because that's what was offered, and she's quite talented at that. So I personally owe a huge debt of thanks to community colleges.
That's a great story. So one more thing that came in while you were chatting, Sean wanted to tell us, thanks for reminding us to have fun, and it must be he's in the medical field too. He says it can help us fill our cups so we have help to offer our patients. So Sean, thank you for being with us today and for that comment.
That's great. So let me tell you what I have for you as a gift for your own edification. This is my book. Obviously, I'd love for you to buy my book, but you don't have to buy my book to get this resiliency assessment. Notice the hashtag, not hashtag, notice the website down here, and it's it's my name, EileenMcDargh.com, your-resiliency-GPS. When you go to that page, you will see, you can download it. There are 2 assessments. One is a personal assessment, one is an organizational assessment. You will be able to take those 2 things. And when you go to that page, it says, thank you for buying my book. Well, I'm sending you there. You don't have to buy the book. Just go there and use that as a resource for you. I'd love to hear from any of you. I hope you have found this a valuable time, and I'm just honored that you have shared your 1 hour of a Wednesday with us.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Eileen, for sharing your wisdom and expertise and passion and smiles and energy with us today. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Becky. You were a great host.
Bye-bye.